By the time most Americans understood what was happening on September 11th, 2001, two planes had already struck the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. While most people around the world focused on Lower Manhattan, another hijacked aircraft was still in the sky. Somewhere over the eastern United States, a Boeing 757 had turned around and was flying directly towards the nation's capital. That airplane was American Airlines Flight 77. For years, its story has taken a back seat to the events in Lower Manhattan at the World Trade Center, but its final moments would become one of the most consequential flights in American history. The final hours of American Airlines Flight 77 start in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. At 6:15 a.m. on September 11th, 2001, Hani Hanjour and Majed Mukhed check out of the Budget Host Valencia Motel in Laurel, Maryland. Hani Hanjour first arrived in the United States in 1991 to study English before returning to Saudi Arabia in 1992 and returning to the United States again that same year. For a decade, Hani Hanjour lived on and off again in the United States across several cities. In 1999, Hani Hanjour received a commercial pilot's license in the United States and tried to find work as a commercial air pilot in Saudi Arabia, but was not successful. In late 1999, Hani Hanjour left his home in Saudi Arabia and is suspected to have attended Al-Qaeda training camps in Afghanistan. Due to his ability to fly an airplane, Al-Qaeda's leadership picks Hani Hanjour as a replacement for Ramzi bin al-Shibh, who was supposed to be the fourth pilot on 9/11, but bin al-Shibh was denied entry into the United States because U.S. officials saw him as a threat to overstay his visa. Majed Mukhed, the man who checks out with Hani Hanjour, will help Hanjour hijack American Airlines Flight 77 later that morning. In the days before 9/11, Mukhed was seen in two stores in Maryland's Washington, D.C. suburbs looking over adult videos and books, although employees say he made no purchases. Both men are seen on September 5th, 2001, at a local ATM machine taking out cash. At 6:52 a.m., Nuef al-Hazmi, his younger brother Salim al-Hazmi, and Khalid al-Midar check out of room 122 of the Marriott Resident Inn in Herndon, Virginia. Reportedly, another unidentified man that was staying at the same hotel also checks out around this time. It was later identified that a prominent Saudi official named Salih ibn Abdul Rahman Hussein was staying in the same hotel with the hijackers on the night of September 10th. However, there is no evidence the hijackers and Hussein had any contact with one another, according to the Washington Post. At 6:30 a.m., Nuef al-Hazmi and the other muscle hijackers get a Dulles Airport taxi from the Marriott Resident Inn to Dulles International Airport. At 7:15 a.m., Khalid al-Midar and Majed Mukhed check in with American Airlines at Dulles International Airport. 3 minutes later, at 7:18 a.m., both Mukhed and al-Midar go through airport security screening at Dulles Airport. Both men set off the alarm and are directed to a second metal detector. Though al-Midar does not trigger the second metal detector and is permitted through the security checkpoint, Majed Mukhed fails the second inspection and is inspected by a security officer with a metal detection hand wand. Majed Mukhed passes the hand wand inspection and is permitted through the security checkpoint. At 7:29 a.m., both Al-Hazmi brothers, Nuef and Salim, check in at the American Airlines ticket counter at Dulles International Airport. 6 minutes later, at 7:35 a.m., Hani Hanjour places 2 carry-on bags on the X-ray belt and passes through the metal detector at Dulles Airport. He picks up his bags and proceeds through the checkpoint. Just 1 minute later, at 7:36 a.m., Nuef Al-Hazmi and Salim Al-Hazmi go through the security checkpoint. Both men had carry-on bags, but Nuef Al-Hazmi sets off the metal detector and is inspected with a metal detection hand wand. His bag is also swiped by an explosives trace detector before he is allowed to proceed. In this security video footage, which can be difficult to see, Nuef Al-Hazmi is seen carrying an unidentified item clipped to his back pants pocket. The computer-assisted passenger pre-screening system, better known as CAPS, selects all 5 of the hijackers for added security scrutiny. Hani Hanjour, Khalid Al-Midar, and Majed Muked were chosen by the computer algorithm. The Al-Hazmi brothers, Nuef and Salim, were both selected by CAPS at the discretion of the airline's customer service representative who checked them in. The agent said one of the hijackers, which is believed to be Salim Al-Hazmi, presented identification without a picture and did not speak English. The customer service agent said that he thought both were suspicious and made sure he made both of them be selected by CAPS. Von Alex, the American Airlines gate agent who interacted with Nuef and Salim Al-Hazmi that morning, describes his experience with the Al-Hazmi brothers.
Around, and 2 late passengers came running in the terminal, stopped, and I was joking. I looked at my agents and I said, "Watch, these 2 are for Flight 77," and they were.
For the 5 hijackers, the only consequence of the CAPS selection was that any checked bags were held off the plane until it was confirmed that the passenger had boarded the aircraft. Thus, for Hani Hanjour, Nuef Al-Hazmi, and Khalid Al-Midar, who did not check any bags, suffered no consequences from their selection by the system. At this point, all 5 hijackers have gone through Dulles Airport security with only minor incidents. The team of 5 was led by pilot hijacker Hani Hanjour. The hijackers on American Airlines Flight 77 were all from Saudi Arabia and between the ages of 20 to 29 years old. American Flight 77 was the only one of the 4 hijacked aircrafts on 9/11 that the hijackers were all from Saudi Arabia, despite 15 of the 19 hijackers being of Saudi nationality. Both Nuef Al-Hazmi and Khalid Al-Midar were on a terrorist watch list in the United States before 9/11. Both men are senior members of Al-Qaeda who arrived in the United States in January of 2000, nearly 2 years before 9/11. One notable detail is that the hijackers on American Flight 77 had no communication with the 3 other hijacker teams. The other 3 teams of Al-Qaeda hijackers communicated in some capacity on the morning of September 11th. The probable cause for the lack of communication with American Flight 77 is that the pilots of the other flights were all members of the Hamburg cell. Hani Hanjour was a replacement pilot who did not have a deep relationship with pilot hijackers Mohammed Atta, Ziad Jarrah, or Marwan al-Shehi. This could also explain the coordination of the attacks on the morning of September 11th. Both teams that will hit the World Trade Center in New York took off from Boston Logan Airport. However, the two teams that were attacking Washington, D.C. did not take off from the same airport. United Airlines Flight 93 would take off from Newark International Airport en route to San Francisco instead of departing from Dulles Airport. At 7:50 a.m., Majed Mukhed and Khalid Almidar board American Flight 77 and sit in seats 12A and 12B in coach. 2 minutes later, at 7:52 a.m., pilot hijacker Hani Hanjour boards and sits in seat 1B closest to the cockpit. And finally, at 7:55 a.m., the two Al-Hazmi brothers, Nuef and Salim, sit in seats 5A and 5B. American Flight 77 has 64 people on board, including the 5 hijackers. The flight consisted of 6 crew members, 53 passengers, and 5 hijackers. The 53 passengers on board, excluding the hijackers, were 26 men, 22 women, and 5 children ranging in ages from 3 to 11. On American Flight 77, there was one passenger who might be categorized as famous or a celebrity. Barbara Olson, a conservative TV commentator and the wife of Ted Olson, the Solicitor General of the United States under President George W. Bush. Barbara Olson was on her way to Los Angeles to make an appearance on political comedian Bill Maher's show Politically Incorrect, and she had recently written a book about former First Lady and future Secretary of State and 2016 Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton. On Flight 77, 3 Washington, D.C. 6th graders were traveling with their teacher chaperones because they were chosen by National Geographic to attend a special seminar in the Channel Islands off Santa Barbara to study marine life. The 3 children were Bernard Brown II, Rodney Dickens, and Asia Cotton. Clifton Cotton, Asia's father, described his daughter as having the biggest smile in the world. She wrote an essay to National Geographic over the summer and won the opportunity to attend the seminar. Michelle Cotton, Asia's mother, recalled that Asia's favorite part of the trip was that she would get to swim with dolphins. Mrs. Cotton recalled the night of September 10th, Asia stayed up very late, but on the morning of September 11th, she popped out of bed because she was so excited and told her mom she would sleep on the plane. Asia would hug and kiss her mom goodbye, and her dad Clifton drove her to Washington Dulles Airport. This group picture and the following photo are the final pictures taken of the passengers of American Flight 77. In the group photo of the National Geographic students, visible in the background is a man whose haircut and dress shirt match what Nuef Al-Hazmi wore that morning when passing through Dulles security footage. This photo may also be the last photograph of any of the Flight 77 hijackers alive, but this has never been confirmed. At 8:09 a.m., American Flight 77 pushes back from Gate D26 at Washington Dulles Airport. It is scheduled to depart at 8:10 a.m. en route to Los Angeles International Airport. 11 minutes later, at 8:20 a.m., American Flight 77 takes off from runway 30 after a 10-minute delay. The Boeing 757 carries over 36,000 pounds of jet fuel and is piloted by Captain Chick Burlingame and First Officer David Charlebois. The capacity of the aircraft is 188 passengers, but with 64 passengers on September 11th, the load factor was 33%, which is the same load factor seen on Tuesdays in the previous 3 months for Flight 77. At 8:25 a.m., American Flight 77 establishes radio contact with FAA Washington Center. All communications between American Flight 77 and FAA Washington Center are routine and normal. 15 minutes later at 8:40 a.m., American Flight 77 is handed off from FAA Washington Center Airspace to FAA Indianapolis Center and makes routine radio contact. At 8:50 a.m., American Flight 77 transmits its last routine radio communication. 1 minute later, at 8:51 a.m., the hijacking of American Airlines Flight 77 begins over eastern Kentucky. According to the 9/11 Commission report, the hijackers on Flight 77 have knives and box cutters, but there's no mention of any bomb threats, mace, or violence from the passengers. However, due to what happened on the other hijacked planes, it is most likely that hijackers Majed Mukhed and Khalid Al-Midar, armed with knives and box cutters, storm the cockpit of American Flight 77 and overpower Captain Burlingame and First Officer Charles Bois. The Al-Hamzi brothers, sitting in economy, push the passengers to the back of the aircraft while Hani Hanjour takes control of the aircraft. With American 77 now under the control of Al-Qaeda, Hani Hanjour deviates from its assigned course and makes a turn to the south at 8:54 a.m. 2 minutes later at 8:56 a.m., American Flight 77 turns off its transponder and the plane is lost to FAA radar displays. Air traffic controllers can now only find the plane when it crosses the path of a ground-based radar. At this point, FAA Indy Center still is not aware that American Flight 11 has hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center or that other aircrafts may have been hijacked. Indy Center believes that American Flight 77 has experienced some serious electrical or mechanical failure. Indy Center makes the first attempt to contact American Flight 77 via radio, but hears no response. Indy Center then contacts American Airlines and air traffic controllers in adjacent sectors to let them know that they have lost contact with Flight 77 and to clear the airspace along Flight 77's flight path towards Los Angeles. At 9 a.m., American Airlines Vice President Gerard Après learns about the lost communication with American Flight 77 and orders that all American Airlines flights in the Northeast that have not taken off remain grounded. 3 minutes later at 9:03 a.m., FAA Center Indy has not been able to locate American Airlines Flight 77 for 10 minutes and begins notifying other agencies that Flight 77 is missing and has possibly crashed. At this time, FAA Center Indy is still not aware of the events that have happened in Lower Manhattan and that United Airlines Flight 175 has just crashed into the South Tower of the World Trade Center with millions watching on live TV. At 9:11 a.m., American Airlines flight attendant Renee May attempts to call her parents, but the call does not connect. Renee May tries again and finally connects with her mother, Nancy May, at 9:12 a.m., who is located in Las Vegas. May tells her mother that her flight has been hijacked by 6 individuals who had moved them to the rear of the plane. Nancy May was not sure if her daughter meant all the passengers or just the crew were forced to the back of the plane. Renee May told her mother to contact American Airlines to inform them of the hijacking and gave Nancy May 3 phone numbers to call. From 9:16 to 9:26 a.m., the last 2 calls from American Flight 77 are made when passenger Barbara Olson calls her husband, Solicitor General of the United States, Ted Olson. The first call lasts for a minute before they are disconnected, but during the second call, Barbara Olson explains what is happening to her husband on the flight. Barbara Olson explains to Solicitor General Ted Olson that her flight has been hijacked and the hijackers are wielding knives and box cutters. Mrs. Olson was sitting in first class initially and said the hijackers forced everyone in first class to the back of the airplane. Unlike the 3 other hijacked flights, she does not mention physical violence against the crew or the passengers. During this conversation, Ted Olson tells his wife of the grave reality unfolding and lets her know that 2 airplanes have hit the World Trade Center. He described his wife Barbara as a firecracker and a fighter and said Barbara would not go quietly. At 9:26 a.m., the phone call between the Olsons ends, and this is the last time that Barbara and Ted Olson will ever speak again. Minutes later, at 9:29 a.m., Hani Hanjour disengages the autopilot of American Flight 77, and the plane is now flying at 7,000 feet and approximately 38 miles west of Washington. With American Flight 77 fastly approaching Washington, D.C., at 9:33 a.m., the Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport Tower calls the Secret Service through an internal line that an aircraft is coming their way and isn't communicating with anyone. After this call, Vice President Dick Cheney enters a bunker deep underneath the east wing of the White House. While in the bunker, Vice President Cheney attempts to contact President George W. Bush, but the president is not available. Instead, Vice President Cheney and his staff contact the Secret Service director, and for several hours, the president and vice president communicate about security issues through the Secret Service. It is unknown what orders were passed from President Bush to Vice President Cheney during these communications. At 9:34 a.m., American Flight 77 turns south towards Alexandria, Virginia, and then circles back northeast. It is 5 miles southwest of the Pentagon. Ronald Reagan Washington Tower controllers visually observe the fast-moving Boeing plane completing a right 360-degree turn just south of the Pentagon. At this time, the FAA informs the Northeast Air Defense Sector, better known as NEADS, that American Flight 77 is missing. This is the first notice to the military that American Flight 77 could not be found. Around this time, fighter jets are scrambled from Langley Air Force Base, but due to miscommunication, they are heading east out over the Atlantic Ocean, more than 150 miles away from the Pentagon. Retired U.S. Navy Captain William J. Tody is in his office located at the E ring of the Pentagon, the outermost portion of the building. He was informed by one of his longtime Navy colleagues that an aircraft had been hijacked out of Washington Dulles Airport. Captain Tody thought to himself, the White House is very hard to spot from the air. The Capitol would be symbolic, but there aren't too many people there. And he said out loud, "It's coming here, it's going to hit us." Before anyone could react, at 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashes into the west side of the Pentagon at approximately 530 miles per hour, killing everyone on board instantly. Many eyewitnesses around the Pentagon saw the plane strike the building, and several eyewitnesses said the plane flew so low that right before impact, it knocked over 5 lampposts and a portable generator. The Pentagon was the largest office building in the world until 2023, and approximately 20,000 people worked at the Pentagon on any given day. On September 11, 2001, the Pentagon was celebrating its 60th anniversary from the day construction started back on September 11th, 1941. When American Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon, it destroyed the E, D, and C rings of the Pentagon and went 310 feet into the building. The impact of American Flight 77 left a hole that was 2 stories tall and 70 feet wide. Captain William Tody would escape through the mall entrance of the Pentagon, and one of the first things that caught his attention on the lawn of the Pentagon was an airplane fuselage with a giant red A on it. He immediately recognized this piece to be that from an American Airlines plane. After the impact of American Flight 77, the Pentagon's on-site firehouse responded immediately. Firefighters from Reagan National Airport and Arlington County Fire Department arrived within minutes. Employees of the Pentagon immediately begin to evacuate. Sergeant First Class Chris Brayman evacuates from an undamaged section of the Pentagon and sprints toward the crash site. It had every bit of the sounds of combat, the smells, the screams, and the horrors. As I looked up, I said, "Dear Lord, give me the strength for what I'm about to do." Sergeant Brayman, along with Lieutenant Colonel Ted Anderson, run towards the raging fire and climb through a broken first-floor window near the explosion and begin pulling out survivors. Almost immediately, both men find an injured survivor and pull him out, and he tells Sergeant Brayman and Lieutenant Colonel Anderson to go help other people left behind. At 9:45 a.m., 8 minutes after the attack on the Pentagon, the White House orders a full evacuation. The evacuation turns to panic as Secret Service personnel yell for people to run. Women are told to take off their heels to run faster. At this time, the FAA orders all civil aircraft to land at the nearest airport as soon as possible. This is the first time in American history that America's airspace is shut down. The news media also begins to report a fire on the National Mall as well as the USA Today building in Arlington, Virginia. Eventually, news outlets realize that the Pentagon is on fire and an aircraft struck the building. At 9:47 a.m., Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld is still at the crash site assisting first responders. Rumsfeld has been on the lawn of the crash site almost immediately after the plane crashed. At this time, he runs over to assist carrying a victim on a stretcher. Aside from Secretary Rumsfeld, many military personnel go back into the building to help rescue trapped employees. For many people trapped inside the impact zone of the Pentagon, escaping would be difficult due to the blast-resistant windows. After the 1998 U.S. Embassy bombings, blast-resistant windows were installed in many U.S. federal buildings because many people died from the glass shards that hit them during the Africa Embassy attacks. At 9:56 a.m., Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld returns to his office in the Pentagon after being away from his desk for 19 minutes. Over the next few minutes, Rumsfeld will contact President Bush and speak with him while he is aboard Air Force One. President Bush is anxious to learn what damage has been done to the Pentagon, and Secretary Rumsfeld reports the information he has. After the Pentagon has been burning for around 23 minutes, at 10 a.m., Langley F-16 fighters reach the skies over Washington. The fighter jets are instructed to not shoot any potential targets, and their task is to identify an aircraft by type and tail number. During the chaos of the attacks, many people around the Pentagon are expecting a second attack on the Pentagon similar to what happened in New York with the Twin Towers. Many civilians and staff at the Pentagon report feeling a sense of relief seeing fighter jets flying over the Pentagon and Washington, D.C. After burning for almost 40 minutes, the roof of the E-ring area of the Pentagon collapses above the gap made by American Flight 77 at 10:15 a.m. With the collapse of the Pentagon roof, the building begins general evacuation. At 10:40 a.m., firefighters and emergency personnel return to the Pentagon to continue extinguishing the flames and rescue efforts. That evening at the Pentagon, Donald Rumsfeld addresses the nation in a press briefing at the Pentagon just hours after the attacks and stated, "It's an indication that the United States government is functioning in the face of this terrible act against our country. I should add that the briefing here is taking place in the Pentagon. The Pentagon's functioning, it will be in business tomorrow." Despite having part of the Pentagon destroyed, the Pentagon never closed on 9/11, and to this day, since its opening, the Pentagon has remained open every single day. In the months to come, the Pentagon faces significant rescue and recovery efforts. During the cleanup effort, the remains of the majority of the victims of American Flight 77 and the victims inside the Pentagon were identified. According to the Washington Post, only 5 victims could not be identified because their remains were damaged beyond identification. The remains of the 5 Al-Qaeda hijackers were identified through a process of elimination and would be turned over to the FBI. The forensics teams confirmed that it seemed 2 of the hijackers were brothers based on their DNA similarities. This turned out to be true, as it was the remains for both Al-Hazmi brothers. One notable item found in the rubble of the Pentagon was Nuef Al-Hazmi's American ID card. It was found damaged during the cleanup efforts of the Pentagon's crash site. The cockpit recorder and flight data recorder of American Flight 77 were found in the rubble of the Pentagon, but they were too damaged for authorities to use in their investigation. The video recording of American Airlines Flight 77 striking the Pentagon was not released until May 2006, nearly 5 years after 9/11. In this security camera, across the Pentagon, a plane is visible in one frame as a thin white blur, and an explosion follows. In early October 2001, a $501 million repair and renovation initiative dubbed the Phoenix Project began to rebuild the damaged section of the Pentagon before September 11, 2002. That project succeeded, and the Pentagon was rebuilt in around 10 months. The final death toll at the Pentagon on 9/11 was 184 lives total, excluding the hijackers, and 59 lives on Flight 77, excluding the hijackers. Finally, on the 7th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, on September 11, 2008, the Pentagon Memorial was dedicated and made open to the public. The memorial consists of 184 illuminated benches for the 184 innocent lives who died inside the Pentagon and American Flight 77. They are arranged according to the victims' ages, starting with Dana Falkenberg, age 3, to John Yamke, Sr., age 71. Each bench is engraved with the name of a victim. As the narrator of this documentary, I wanted to close this documentary with a short personal story. In March of 2022, my now wife and I were in New York City and had a layover in Washington Dulles Airport on our way back home. I told my wife that I was going for a walk and I would be back shortly. Rather quickly, I made my way to gate D26 at Washington Dulles Airport. At the time, people were getting ready to board a United Airlines flight to Dublin, Ireland. While people were getting ready to board, I sat in the waiting area. I sat there for less than 5 minutes and watched as family, friends, and loved ones socialized and prepared to board. 21 years prior, many innocent people were at this exact gate on a bright September morning, preparing to travel to Los Angeles in what would be the last flight of their lives, American Airlines Flight 77. Currently, Gate D26 is no longer a gate for American Airlines, but a gate for United Airlines. For most travelers, Gate D26 is an airport gate and won't think twice about it. For 59 innocent people on the morning of September 11th, it was their final sight on land. Eventually, September 11th will be another day on the calendar. But for those of us who lived through 9/11, it is a day that will remain with us for the rest of our lives, and we will be reminded of that day through history, the media, and even subtle hints such as an airport gate. I want to thank you for watching another episode of The Legacy Times. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps me make more videos like this. Our educational series on the 9/11 attacks will continue in the next video. Until then, stay informed, stay curious, and most importantly, be kind. And I'll see you next time.